I'm Hannah, 32 years old, and I guess you could say I have a pretty bubbly personality. People always tell me I light up a room. I'm the kind of woman who knows what she wants, and I don't exactly hold back when I've got something to say. It's part of my charm, right? At least that's what I tell myself. My husband, Mason, might have a different opinion. He'd probably call it something else entirely. Mason's 34. He's smart, driven, and honestly, he's got this whole rugged, self-made man thing going on that women fawn over. I'm not blind. I see how people look at him. He didn't go to college, didn't even finish high school, but somehow he's made a success out of himself. He owns his own business, drives a truck that's way nicer than mine, and always seems to have a plan for the future. And then there's me, Hannah, the college grad with a marketing degree, stuck working part-time at a boutique because it's low stress. To be fair, Mason has never thrown his success in my face. He doesn't have to. It's there, plain as day, every time we're around my family or our friends. I mean, how many times can I hear, "Wow, Mason, you're so impressive," before it starts to feel like a personal jab? I went to school. I did everything right. And yet, here I am, watching my husband, who doesn't even have a diploma, pull ahead of me in life like it's nothing. I hate to admit it, but sometimes it eats at me. Not in a way I can really explain, but more like this little gnawing voice in the back of my head. It's not fair, I think. I should be the one people admire. I should be the one who's thriving. But no, it's always Mason. He's the golden boy, and I'm just his wife. The girl who married up. The teasing started as a joke. At least that's what I told myself. It wasn't like I woke up one day and decided to be cruel. It just kind of happened, little by little. My family was over for dinner one night, and Mason made some offhand comment about not needing a college degree to succeed. I laughed, too loudly, probably, and said something like, "Yeah, but at least I know how to spell entrepreneur." My dad chuckled, and my mom gave me this look like she didn't approve, but Mason just smiled and let it slide. That's the thing about Mason. He never reacts the way I want him to. I don't even know what I want, really. Maybe just for him to get flustered, to admit that maybe, just maybe, I'm smarter than him in some ways. But no, he's always calm, always so damn composed. It's infuriating. A few weeks later, I brought it up again, this time in front of our friends. We were at a barbecue, and someone asked Mason about his business. He was explaining his plans to expand, and I chimed in with, "Pretty impressive for a guy who didn't finish high school, huh?" Everyone laughed, and Mason just shrugged it off like he always does. But I saw the flicker in his eyes. Just for a second, I saw it. And I felt satisfied. Is that terrible? It probably is, but in that moment, I didn't care. The teasing became a habit after that. Little comments here and there, always with a smile, always wrapped in just enough humor to pass as a joke. Oh, don't ask Mason about grammar, he barely passed English. Or, "Hey babe, want me to help you with that spreadsheet?" Since I actually learned Excel in college. Looking back, I think I was testing him, pushing boundaries to see how far I could go before he snapped. But he never did. Mason is the kind of man who doesn't fight back, not with words anyway. He just withdraws, goes quiet, and buries himself in his work. At first I didn't notice. I was too busy basking in my own sense of superiority to realize what I was doing to him, or to us. But then one day he didn't come home for dinner. It wasn't like him. Mason is a creature of habit, always home by 6 unless he has a good reason. I texted him, and he replied an hour later with a curt, "Working late, don't wait up." No explanation, no apology, just those 6 words. And for the first time, I felt a pang of something I couldn't quite name. Guilt? Fear? Maybe both. When he finally did come home, it was past midnight. I was still awake, lying in bed, scrolling through Instagram and pretending not to care. But when I heard the door open, my heart leapt into my throat. He didn't come upstairs right away. Instead, I heard him moving around in the kitchen, opening and closing cabinets like he was deliberately trying to make noise. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I got up, threw on my robe, and went downstairs. Mason was standing at the counter, eating a sandwich like it was the most normal thing in the world. He didn't even look up when I walked in. "Late night?" I said, trying to sound casual. "Yep." His tone was flat, emotionless. "Everything okay?" I pressed. "Fine." And that was it. No explanation, no details, just one-word answers that left me feeling more frustrated than ever. I wanted to demand answers, to ask him why he was being so cold, but something about the look on his face stopped me. He seemed tired. Not just physically, but emotionally, like he'd finally reached the end of his rope. I went back upstairs without saying another word. I told myself I didn't care, that if he wanted to act like a sulking teenager, that was his problem, not mine. But deep down, I knew something had shifted between us, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was the one who had pushed him to this point. The next morning, Mason was gone before I woke up. Normally, I'd hear him moving around the house, his boots on the hardwood, the faint clink of his coffee mug. But that morning, it was silent. When I came downstairs, his truck was gone, and there was a note on the counter. Left early. Don't forget the plumber's coming at 10. That was it. No love you, no smiley face like he used to leave. Just a reminder about the plumber. It annoyed me more than it should have. It wasn't like we had some big fight the night before. If anything, it felt like nothing had happened at all, which was somehow worse. At least when people fight, there's passion, emotion. But this was nothing, just cold, empty silence. By the time he got home that evening, I'd made up my mind. I was going to apologize. Not because I felt like I'd done anything wrong, but because I couldn't stand the way he was acting. It was exhausting, walking on eggshells around him, waiting for him to snap out of it. I figured if I apologized, he'd stop with the passive-aggressive nonsense, and we could go back to normal. When Mason walked through the door, I was sitting on the couch, pretending to read a book. He looked at me, nodded once, and headed straight for the kitchen without saying a word. I followed him. "Hey," I said, leaning against the doorway. "Hey," he replied, not looking up as he opened the fridge. "Can we talk for a second?" He glanced at me, his expression unreadable, then grabbed a bottle of water and leaned against the counter. "What's up?" I hesitated, suddenly feeling awkward. I wanted to say I'm sorry, for some of the things I've said, the teasing and all that." Mason raised an eyebrow, but he didn't say anything. He just looked at me, waiting for me to continue. "I didn't mean to hurt your feelings," I added quickly. "I was just joking around. I guess I didn't realize it was bothering you." He nodded slowly, taking a sip of his water. "Okay." That was it. Just okay. No thank you, no I appreciate that, just okay. It was like he was deliberately trying to make this harder than it needed to be. "So, are we good?" I asked, forcing a smile. Mason studied me for a moment, his eyes searching mine like he was trying to figure out if I was being sincere. "Sure," he said finally. "We're good." I should have felt relieved, but instead I felt irritated. Why did he have to make everything such a big deal? I'd apologized, hadn't I? What more did he want from me? Still, I forced myself to smile and said, "Great, I'm glad we talked." But deep down, I wasn't glad. I was annoyed. Annoyed that I'd had to apologize in the first place. Annoyed that Mason hadn't even seemed grateful. And annoyed that nothing about this conversation had made me feel any better. Over the next few days, things started to feel a little more normal. Mason wasn't as distant, but he wasn't exactly warm either. He'd come home, ask about my day, and make small talk over dinner, but there was a stiffness to him that hadn't been there before. It was like he was holding something back, and I didn't know how to fix it, or if I even wanted to. One night, as we were lying in bed, I tried to bring it up again. "You've been really quiet lately," I said, keeping my voice light. "Is everything okay?" Mason turned to look at me, his face calm but serious. "Everything's fine, Hannah. I'm just trying to focus on what's important." "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked, frowning. "It means I've been thinking a lot about where we're headed, about what I want for the future." I sat up a little, my heart pounding. "And what does that mean? Are you saying you're not happy?" Mason sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm saying I want us to be better. For both of us. I don't think we've been on the same page lately." I stared at him, my mind racing. Was this his way of saying he wanted out? Was he planning to leave me? "I apologized," I said defensively. "I thought we were fine." "It's not just about the apology, Hannah," he said, his voice calm but firm. "It's about the way we treat each other, the way we talk to each other. I don't want to feel like we're competing all the time." "Competing?" I repeated, my voice rising. "I'm not competing with you, Mason. You're the one who's always working, always so focused on your business that you barely have time for me. Maybe if you were around more, we wouldn't have these problems." Mason shook his head, his expression sad but not angry. "You don't see it, do you? You don't see how the little comments, the teasing, it all adds up. It's not just about me being busy. It's about respect, Hannah. And I don't think we've been showing each other much of that lately." I opened my mouth to argue, but the words caught in my throat. For once, I didn't know what to say. Mason was being so calm, so mature about all of this, and it made me feel small, petty, like I was the problem, which of course I wasn't, or at least I didn't think I was. "Fine," I said finally, crossing my arms. "If that's how you feel, then maybe you need to figure out what you really want." Mason looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "Maybe I do." And with that, he rolled over and turned off the light, leaving me alone with my thoughts, and a sinking feeling I couldn't quite shake. The next morning, Mason acted like nothing had happened. He got up, showered, and left for work without a word about our conversation the night before. If anything, he seemed lighter, more at ease, like he'd made peace with whatever was on his mind. But that only made me feel worse. For the first time, I started to realize that Mason didn't need me the way I needed him. He didn't need anyone, really. He was self-sufficient, capable, and, let's face it, a catch. I'd always known he was attractive. Broad shoulders, strong jawline, that confident way he carried himself. But now I couldn't stop thinking about how other women must see him. Women who didn't nag him or poke at his insecurities. Women who probably made him feel appreciated, something I clearly hadn't been doing. The thought gnawed at me all day. By the time Mason came home, I'd convinced myself that he was either cheating or thinking about it. Why else would he suddenly seem so detached, so okay with everything? He didn't even seem upset with me anymore, and that scared me. I'd always believed that anger meant someone still cared, but Mason wasn't angry. He was calm, composed, and that made me feel like I was losing him. That night, I decided to do something I rarely ever did. Cook dinner. Not just throw something together, but actually make one of Mason's favorite meals: grilled steak, roasted potatoes, and sautéed green beans. I even lit candles and set the table like it was a special occasion. When Mason walked in, he raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. "What's all this?" he asked, setting his keys on the counter. "Just thought we could have a nice dinner," I said, forcing a smile. "You've been working so hard lately. I wanted to do something nice for you." Mason nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Thanks, Hannah. It looks great." We sat down, and for a while, things felt almost normal. We talked about his day, the progress he was making on a new project, and I tried my best to seem engaged and supportive. But the whole time I couldn't stop thinking about whether he was texting someone else when I wasn't looking. Was he confiding in another woman? Laughing with her about how his wife didn't understand him? The thought made my stomach churn, and before I could stop myself, I blurted out, "You've been really distant lately. Is there something you're not telling me?" Mason looked up from his plate, his expression calm but curious. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "You've just been so quiet, so together. It's like you don't even care anymore." He set his fork down and leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Hannah, I care. But I've been trying to focus on myself, on staying calm and not letting things get to me." "I thought that's what you wanted." "What I want," I said, my voice rising despite my best efforts, "is to know that we're okay, that you're not looking for something better." Mason's brow furrowed, and for the first time I saw a flicker of frustration in his eyes. "Where is this coming from? I told you I want us to be better, to work on how we treat each other. That's all I've been focused on." "But how do I know that's true?" I shot back. "You don't tell me what you're thinking. You just go to work, come home, and act like everything's fine. How am I supposed to believe you're not?" I trailed off, unable to say the word. "Not what? Cheating?" he asked, his voice steady but firm. I looked away, ashamed but unwilling to back down. "I don't know, maybe." Mason let out a long sigh, rubbing his temples like he was trying to keep his patience. "Hannah, I'm not cheating. I've been trying to give us both space to figure things out. But if you can't trust me, I don't know how we're supposed to move forward." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. He wasn't yelling, Wasn't accusing me of anything, but the disappointment in his voice was worse than any argument we'd ever had. I wanted to take it back, to tell him I believed him, but the insecurity bubbling inside me wouldn't let me. "I just feel like I'm losing you," I whispered, my eyes stinging with tears. "And I don't know how to fix it." Mason's face softened, but he didn't reach for me like I'd hoped he would. Instead, he leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "Hannah, I don't need grand gestures or big apologies. I need you to respect me, to support me, and to stop tearing me down every chance you get. That's what I need to feel like this is worth fighting for." His words hung in the air, heavy and final. I nodded, wiping at my eyes, but inside I felt like I was failing. I tried to make things right, to show him I cared, but all I'd done was make things worse. Mason finished his dinner in silence, then cleared his plate and went upstairs, leaving me alone with the flickering candles and a knot of regret in my chest. Over the next few days, I tried harder. I complimented him more, asked about his day, and even made an effort to stop the teasing, though it took everything I had to bite my tongue sometimes. But no matter what I did, Mason remained distant. Not cold, but not warm either. Just polite, civil. And that terrified me more than anything. I started checking his phone when he wasn't looking. Not that I found anything, but the act itself made me feel even more pathetic. I Googled signs your husband is cheating late at night, scrolling through lists and convincing myself that Mason fit at least half of them. The worst part was, I couldn't tell if I was more afraid of losing him or of him being happier without me. One evening, I decided to try again. I waited until Mason was sitting on the couch, watching some home renovation show he liked, and sat down beside him. "Do you want to go out this weekend?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "We haven't had a date night in forever." Mason glanced at me, his expression unreadable. "Sure," he said after a moment. "That sounds nice." It should have made me happy, but the way he said it, calm, indifferent, only made me feel more insecure. I wanted him to be excited, to smile and say, "That's a great idea, babe." But he didn't. And once again, I felt like I was failing. As the days passed, my emotions got the best of me. I became clingy, constantly seeking reassurance that Mason wasn't ready to leave me. But the more I tried to hold on, the more he seemed to slip away. I was already on edge that day, but I didn't realize how much worse it could get until she showed up. Her name was Ashley, of course it was. She was 28, maybe 29, with that polished, effortless look that made me feel frumpy, even though I'd spent an hour curling my hair that morning. She was the kind of woman who could walk into a room and have everyone's attention without even trying. And worst of all, she seemed to have Mason's. We were at a work-related gathering, something casual, hosted by one of Mason's clients. I wasn't thrilled about going, but Mason insisted it would be a good opportunity for me to meet some of the people he worked with. He said it like it was supposed to make me feel included, but all it did was remind me how separate his world was from mine. Ashley was introduced as one of Mason's key contacts on a recent project. From the moment she walked over, her enthusiasm was dialed up to 11. "Mason," she beamed, flipping her perfect blonde hair over one shoulder. "It's so good to see you. I was just telling Ryan how incredible you've been to work with. Honestly, I don't know how you manage to juggle everything." Mason smiled, one of those genuine, easy smiles that had been so rare at home lately. "Thanks, Ashley. You've been great to work with, too." I tried to ignore the way her face lit up at his compliment, but it felt like a punch to the gut. She laughed at everything he said, leaning in just enough to make it clear she thought he was the most fascinating man in the room. And the worst part? Mason didn't seem to mind. In fact, he seemed to enjoy it. I tried to insert myself into the conversation, but Ashley barely acknowledged me. She was too busy showering Mason with praise. "You're honestly such an inspiration," she gushed. "I mean, to build what you've built without a formal education, that takes real talent and grit. Not many people could do what you've done." I felt my stomach twist. It wasn't just the words. It was the way she said them, like Mason was some kind of hero. I knew I should let it go, but my insecurities had other plans. If she thought Mason was so amazing, maybe it was time she saw the whole picture. "Yeah, he's great," I said, my tone a little too sweet. "But you know, Mason's had his struggles. Like that time he bombed a simple math problem during a meeting because he didn't know how to calculate percentages. I mean, not everyone can get by without some basic schooling, right? The words hung in the air like a bad smell. Mason's smile faded, and Ashley's expression shifted from admiration to discomfort. She glanced at Mason, clearly unsure how to respond. Mason didn't take the bait. He just looked at me, his jaw tightening slightly, and said, "Well, we all have our strengths and weaknesses. Ashley, if you'll excuse us for a second." Before I could react, Mason gently but firmly steered me away from the group. We ended up near the corner of the room, far enough away from everyone else that no one could hear us. "What the hell was that?" he asked, his voice low but firm. "What was what?" I shot back, crossing my arms defensively. "I was just being honest." "No, you were being petty," he said, his eyes narrowing. "And for what? To embarrass me? To try and make yourself look better?" I felt a surge of anger rise in my chest. "I wasn't trying to embarrass you. I stopped, realizing I didn't even know how to finish the sentence. "Just what?" Mason pressed. "Trying to make sure Ashley doesn't think too highly of me? Because God forbid someone respects me for what I've accomplished." "She was flirting with you," I snapped, my voice rising despite the people around us. "Don't act like you didn't notice." Mason sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Ashley wasn't flirting. She was being professional. And even if she was, it doesn't matter because I'm married to you. Or have you forgotten that?" "Oh, so now this is my fault?" I shot back. "You're the one lapping up her attention like some lovesick puppy." Mason stared at me for a long moment, his expression calm but tired. "Hannah, this isn't about Ashley. This is about you, about the fact that you can't stand it when someone gives me the respect you refuse to." "That's not true," I said, but the words felt hollow even as I said them. "Isn't it?" Mason said quietly. "You've spent months tearing me down, and now, when someone else builds me up, you can't handle it. Do you even hear yourself?" I felt tears prick my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "I just don't want to lose you," I whispered, my voice cracking. Mason's expression softened, but only slightly. "You're not going to lose me, Hannah. But if you keep trying to tear me down just to make yourself feel better, I don't know how we're supposed to make this work." That was it, the final straw. All the frustration, insecurity, and anger I'd been bottling up came spilling out. Oh, don't act like you're some perfect saint, Mason," I spat. "You've been distant, cold, and impossible to talk to. Maybe if you actually cared about me instead of your stupid business, we wouldn't be in this mess." Mason didn't react. He just stood there, watching me with a mixture of sadness and exhaustion. "I do care about you, Hannah," he said quietly. "But I can't keep doing this if you're not willing to look at yourself and take responsibility for the way you treat me." His words cut deeper than I wanted to admit. I opened my mouth to argue, but nothing came out. Mason shook his head, then walked away, leaving me standing there alone, surrounded by people who had no idea the storm raging inside me. The days after that event with Ashley were tense, to say the least. Mason wasn't distant in the same way he had been before. He was distant in a new, more deliberate way. It wasn't subtle. He wasn't trying to hide it anymore. He spent more hours at work, came home late most nights, and even when he was home, he wasn't really there. He'd sit in the office instead of watching TV with me, or take his dinner to the kitchen island instead of the table. It felt like I was living with a stranger. I tried to tell myself it was just a phase, that maybe he needed time to cool off, but my insecurities were louder than my logic. Every time I saw him on his phone, I convinced myself he was texting Ashley, or someone like her. When he smiled faintly at something on the screen, it felt like a dagger to my heart. He denied anything was wrong, but his actions said otherwise. Or maybe that was just me spiraling. Either way, I couldn't let it go. One night, after Mason had fallen asleep, I gave in to the urge that had been gnawing at me for weeks. I picked up his phone from the nightstand and entered his passcode. A passcode I knew because Mason trusted me. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through his messages, but there was nothing. No texts from Ashley. No incriminating conversations, just boring back and forths with clients, coworkers, and his brother. I should have felt relieved, but instead I felt even more desperate. If he wasn't talking to anyone else, then why was he acting like this? Why did it feel like he was slipping away from me? I put his phone back and spent the rest of the night lying awake, my mind racing with questions I couldn't answer. The next day, I took it a step further. I told Mason I was meeting a friend for coffee, but instead, I drove to his office. I parked across the street and waited, watching the entrance like a hawk. Part of me hoped I'd catch him in the act, whatever the act was, but another part of me dreaded what I might see. After 2 hours of sitting in my car, nothing happened. No Ashley, no other woman, nothing suspicious at all. Mason eventually came out to grab lunch, and he looked exactly the same as he always did. Calm, focused, completely oblivious to the fact that I was sitting there, spying on him like a lunatic. I went home feeling defeated. I couldn't find any proof of anything, but my gut told me something was wrong. And if I couldn't find the evidence, maybe I just needed to force it out of him. That night, when Mason came home, I was ready. I waited until he was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone, and then I sat down across from him. "Who is it?" I asked, my voice shaking. Mason looked up, confused. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb, Mason," I snapped. "I know there's someone else. Just tell me the truth." Mason's expression didn't change. He set his phone down and leaned back, crossing his arms. "Hannah, there's no one else." I don't know how many times I have to say that. "You expect me to believe that?" I shot back. "You've been acting weird for weeks. You're never home, you're always on your phone, and don't even get me started on Ashley." Mason sighed, running a hand through his hair. "This isn't about Ashley. This is about you not trusting me. I've told you the truth, but you're so wrapped up in your own insecurities that you can't hear it." "Insecurities?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You're seriously going to sit there and call me insecure? You're the one who's been distant and secretive." "I've been distant," Mason said, his voice calm but firm, "because I'm tired, Hannah. I'm tired of trying to make this work when all you do is tear me down. Do you even hear yourself? You're accusing me of cheating when I've done nothing but put up with your constant criticism and paranoia." That struck a nerve. "Put up with me?" I said, my voice trembling with anger. "Are you serious right now? I'm the only reason you even look respectable. Who else would stick by a guy who couldn't even finish high school?" Mason's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. He just stared at me, his eyes colder than I'd ever seen them. "I'm the one who's had to cover for you," I continued, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "I'm the one who's had to explain to my family why my husband doesn't have a diploma. I'm the one who's had to smile and pretend everything's fine while you act like you're better than me just because you got lucky with your stupid business." Mason didn't yell, he didn't defend himself. He just stood up, grabbed his keys and said, "I can't do this anymore." "Where are you going?" I demanded, panic rising in my chest. "Somewhere I don't have to listen to this," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "I'll be back when I'm ready to talk. Don't wait up." And just like that, he was gone. I stood there, stunned, replaying the argument in my head. I'd crossed a line, several actually, and I knew it. But instead of feeling regret, I felt angry. Angry at Mason for walking away, angry at myself for letting my emotions get the best of me, and angry at the fact that, deep down, I knew he was right. For the first time I realized I might actually lose him. And the worst part? It would be entirely my fault. The night Mason left, I thought he'd be back. I waited for hours, staring at the door, rehearsing the argument I thought we'd have when he returned. I wanted him to yell, to call me out, to give me something to work with. But Mason didn't come home that night, or the next. A week passed. Then 2. When I finally heard from him, it wasn't the apology I'd been waiting for. It was a text. "I need time to think. I'll let you know when I'm ready to talk." That was it. No explanations, no promises, just a cold, detached message that made my stomach churn. For weeks, I spiraled. I called him over and over, leaving messages that ranged from angry accusations to tearful pleas. When he didn't respond, I resorted to showing up at his office, only to be told by his assistant that he was unavailable. My frustration turned to rage. How could he ignore me like this? How could he act like I didn't matter? But deep down, I knew the truth. I'd pushed him to this point. I'd let my insecurities and jealousy turn me into someone Mason couldn't stand to be around. And now he was slipping through my fingers. Eventually, Mason agreed to meet me for coffee. I showed up early, rehearsing what I'd say to convince him to come back. But when he walked in, I barely recognized him. He looked lighter, happier, like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. It stung to realize that weight had been me. "I think it's best if we separate," he said, cutting straight to the point. His voice was calm, but there was a finality to it that left no room for argument. "I need to focus on my life, on building something healthy. And I don't think we can do that together." I argued, of course. I brought up everything I could think of. Our history, our marriage vows, the years we'd spent building a life together. But Mason didn't budge. He said he wanted the best for both of us, but it was clear he'd already made up his mind. After that, we lived separate lives. I clung to the hope that Mason might change his mind, that he'd realize he missed me and come back. But as the months dragged on, that hope began to fade. I threw myself into work, convincing myself I didn't need him, but the truth was, I felt hollow without him. Then one afternoon, my friend Stephanie sent me a screenshot that shattered what little peace I'd managed to find. It was a Facebook post, a picture of Mason with another woman. She was younger, prettier, and practically glowing as she leaned into him, her hand resting on his chest. The caption read, "So grateful for this man and everything he's brought into my life." I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. Stephanie's message came through seconds later. "OMG, is this Mason?" I didn't respond. I couldn't. My hands were shaking as I stared at the photo, my chest tightening with a mix of anger and despair. He had moved on. And not just with anyone, with someone who looked like she belonged on the cover of a magazine, someone who clearly adored him in a way I never had. The next day, I showed up at Mason's office unannounced. His assistant gave me a wary look but didn't try to stop me. When Mason walked out of his office and saw me, his expression hardened. "Hannah," he said, his tone firm but calm. "What are you doing here?" "I saw the picture," I snapped, unable to hide the venom in my voice. "You didn't even have the decency to tell me you were seeing someone." Mason sighed, crossing his arms. "We've been separated for months. I didn't think I owed you an explanation." "Of course you do," I shot back. "We're still married, Mason." "Not for long," he said, his voice steady. "I've already filed the paperwork. You'll be getting the documents soon." His words hit me like a slap. "You're divorcing me?" I said, my voice trembling with disbelief. "Yes, Hannah," he said. "I am. This isn't healthy for either of us. It's time we both moved on." I felt the tears welling up, but I refused to let them fall. "You're throwing me away," I said, my voice shaking. "For her?" "This isn't about her," Mason said firmly. "This is about me finally choosing a life that brings me peace, something I haven't had in a long time." I stared at him, searching for some sign of regret, but there was none. He was resolute, and for the first time, I realized just how far I'd pushed him. I had spent so much time trying to tear him down that I hadn't noticed he'd been quietly building the courage to leave me behind. 2 weeks later, the divorce papers arrived. There was no alimony. Mason made sure of that. I had a degree, a job, and the ability to support myself, and he wasn't going to let me take advantage of him anymore. I signed the papers, feeling a mix of anger and humiliation. But deep down, I knew I didn't deserve anything from him. Months after the divorce was finalized, I saw another post of Mason and his new girlfriend. They were on a beach somewhere, smiling and carefree. He looked happy, really happy, and I realized with a sinking feeling that he had every right to be. As for me, I stayed angry for a while. Angry at Mason, angry at his new girlfriend, angry at myself. But as time went on, that anger turned into something else. Regret. I had been given the chance to love a man who was kind, patient, and ambitious, and I'd thrown it all away because I couldn't handle my own insecurities. And now, I was left with nothing but the memories of the life I'd destroyed.